what is going on with Martin Bakole? So I'm asking this because on Thursday he put out a series of social media rants, basically attacking BOXXER and Ben Shalom and accusing them of trying to ruin his career. So Martin Bakole is a promising young heavyweight, and he's young in the game compared to other heavyweights out there. From the Congo, fighting out of Scotland, trained by and managed by Billy Nelson, or he's mainly trained and advised by Billy Nelson. He's got other management prospects out there. And he's signed with BOXXER, who have said that they've been very, very good to him in response to his allegations that they are trying to ruin his career. So let's get into it. Let's break it down. So why is he saying this, and why is he in this position? So in 2022, Martin Bakole defeated Tony Yoka. It was a huge win, majority decision, but a huge win for his stock after kind of, rebuilding after a good few fights. He'd fought kind of big heavyweights like Marius Vach, after having his first loss against Michael Hunter, which was probably where most people will know Martin Bakole, or where he first came to like the real kind of casual boxing public eye, because he was in this fight against Michael Hunter, who was a former cruiserweight, fighting at heavyweight, and he dislocated his shoulder, and his trainer Billy Nelson was like, listen, you can win this fight like one-handed, like you've got to continue. And Bakole was clearly uncomfortable, and he just didn't look like he wanted to be there. He was complaining. He kept saying like I don't want to finish, and he ended up losing. So that was a massive thing. But then he rebuilt, and then in 2022 he defeats Tony Yoka, and then he has some really good wins. So he beats a guy called Ihor Shivadudsky. Butchered that name, but sorry. He was 10-0 at the time, beats him by KO. He beats Carlos Takam, was 40-7 at the time, but really good knockout victory for him. And then he has the career best win against like highly talented American fighter in Jared Anderson, who was 17-0 at the time, and he defeats him. He then goes on to take like kind of massive money to become like a replacement against Joseph Parker on 2 days, a replacement for Joseph Parker on 2 days notice. He ends up getting started in 2 rounds, but I mean, you couldn't forgive that because he was clearly not prepared, and he got on the plane looking much heavier than I'd ever seen him before. And then he drew with F.A. Jagba, but he's been relatively inactive since, and this is where the conundrum comes in, and this is where it becomes really subjective, like who's right, who's wrong, and what are the reasons. So from Martin Bakole's perspective, I think he's really, really talented, and he's a dangerous fighter, which makes him an avoided fighter, and he'd be seen as really a high risk, low reward for any top heavyweight, especially a heavyweight coming up like Jared Anderson. Like probably went in there not knowing how good Bakole actually is. And he sparred Anthony Joshua, he sparred Alexander Usyk. I mean, I remember Dave Allen saying in a video before, like he's like exceptionally good in a spar, so you can only imagine how good he'd be in a fight. And there's a lot of heavyweights out there that he could potentially fight who would probably turn down the opportunity to take on Martin Bakole, because as I said, he's dangerous. Then you look at it from BOXXER's perspective, and their kind of major argument or rebuttal to what he was saying was that they've made him good offers that he's turned down, and he hasn't been ready, and he's not been fit and able to take the opportunities provided to him. Cue the example of Moses Italma, and they're willing to pay, or he would have gotten a purse of 1.5 million, or sorry, a pay of 1.5 million. How true that is, I'm not sure. There'd be stipulations with that, but I mean, that's good money to fight essentially at the time relatively junior, kind of young in the game heavyweight. I wouldn't have taken that fight, because I think Moses Itoma is the future of heavyweight boxing. But that's a story and a video for another day. They also said that they had provided him with other opportunities and he's just flat turned them down. So that begs the question, like, are they dealing with a kind of prima donna-esque fighter who only wants, he doesn't want to take on hard fights because he knows what that will do for his prospects? Like, are they dealing with the guy who's just very injury prone or is just not living the life? I mean, so a lot of people think that he is way overweight than he should be, and that he fights too heavy. He likes his food, and he's not disciplined. I mean, that's a lot of hearsay and rumors, but where there's smoke, there's fire. I think a lot of the time, if somebody is living the life, and if somebody is a consummate professional. I mean, you can see it in their physique, and you can see it in their training, and you can see it in their willingness and readiness to fight. And he's clearly not any of those. So, it's a tough one and it's a conundrum. But where do we go with this? Like, what happens? It's a clear cry for help. Like, either he wants out of the promotional outfit, and he's saying that he's got lawyers who have said that he doesn't need to, or he's not obligated to fight for box anymore. His contract is out. Now, if you understand the business of boxing, it's very difficult to understand it, because a promotional contract doesn't last for X amount of time. Usually you sign on a specific number of fight deals, and once you've had the specific number of fights, it's like a 5-fight deal or a 7-fight deal, and maybe there's stipulations in there have to be certain types of fight. Like, maybe boxers signed him for 5 fights, but there had to be 5 big arena fights of 10 rounds or more, and one of them needed to be like an eliminator or a world title. Not, okay, well, because you're not in the big mix position anymore, we get you a 6-rounder and an 8-rounder. Those count as 2 of your 5 fights. It doesn't work like that. So a lot of the time fighters can sit on the shelf because they're not getting the opportunities, and they're not taking the opportunities. And the promotion, they can only give you the option. Like, you're the fighter, you're the product at the end of the day, or the service provider. You choose if you're going to fight or not. No one's holding a gun to your head. But then you just sit with a promotional contract that just never runs out. So I think it's in everyone's best interest that he fights, and in order for him to fight, he needs to be ready. And in order for him to be ready, he needs to be motivated that he's going to be on world title track. The problem with the heavyweight scene at the moment is that everyone, at least for the next few months, up until midway through summer, everyone has a dance partner. So he's got to sit and wait for a little bit longer or he's got to take some big risks, because there's a lot of fights that he could take, or there's a lot of fights that could be made. I mean, he wants the Furies and the Usyks and the Joshuas, but he's not going to get that without maybe fighting someone like Richard Torres or Frank Sanchez, Agit Kabayel. Although Agit Kabayel, that's an example of somebody, probably Agit Kabayel would turn that down. Although he fights anyone, so you've got to give it to him. But, he's got to fight an upcoming, person like Moses Itoma. He's got to take a fight like that, and 1.5 million is a lot of money, so for a guy who's not been active for a long time and is coming off a loss and a draw. So look, it's an interesting situation. I want to see how this plays out. I want to see him back to kind of fighting at world standard. I'm a big fan of his. I'm a big fan of his brother Lunga Mukabu. As a South African, he fights out of Johannesburg. So yeah, that's Lunga Mukabu. Yeah, and I think Martin Bakole has what it takes to be a world champion. So let me know your thoughts. I'd be really interested to see if anyone thinks any differently, and that which side of the fence you're on. Like and subscribe for more content, and have a great day.